When building models in Maya, it's really important to have as much information as you possibly can about the geometry that you're creating. So in this lesson, we'll look at a couple of ways that we can get information regarding the different types of geometry that we're using. So let's go ahead and open this up, and as with any of these, you can open up your project files and follow along to see what we're doing. So this is just a kind of an ogre model here. And so just by looking at this, we can see that it's a polygon model. So we've got a number of different polygonal faces. Okay. Now, we'd really like to know exactly how many polygons that we have in this model. There are a number of reasons for this. You may be working in a pipeline where you have to stay under a certain number of polygons for your quota, but it's just a good idea to know, how many polygons are in this guy. So one of the ways that we can do this is to go up to Display, and let's turn on our heads-up display, and this will allow us to turn on a number of these different little bits of information that we may need. Okay, we can turn on poly count, and now you can see that we get a new display over our viewport. Okay, and this is showing the number of vertices, edges, faces, triangles, and so forth. Now this is going to be your selected, and this is for everything. So you can see as I select, since this is the only thing in the scene, these are the same. Now we've got faces and triangles, okay, and we don't want to think of this as two separate things as far as maybe quad faces and then additional triangles. This is kind of the number of triangles, the entire number of triangles. So if you have a quad, this would be 2 triangles and so forth. Okay, so we can get a lot of information here. Let's say that we go ahead and smooth this, use our smooth mesh preview. This will actually change our display. So now we're looking at 69,000 faces, and it looks like 139,000 triangles by taking into account the smoothing that we're doing. If we go ahead and hit 1 to turn that off, we can see that that is now back to our low cage. If you don't want that behavior, you can go back to our heads-up display and go to our poly count, and there's an option box here. And all we need to do is just turn on cage rather than smooth mesh preview. We'll apply that. And now even if we smooth this, the polygon count is still only taking into account the low cage. Okay, so that's one of the little behaviors that you may need to tweak if you want to. Okay, so that gives us information about the number of polygons, about the resolution that we have here in our model. But let's say we want to get some information about the types of polygons and faces that we have within our model. You can see just by looking out there are a number of quad faces, so faces with 4 sides. Okay, in many workflows and pipelines, the quad faces are going to be the ones that you want to stick with for the most part. There are exceptions to that. In many game applications, you're going to be using triangles. They all kind of end up triangles in the end. But for animation purposes, deformation purposes, also for sculpting purposes, there are a number of reasons why typically people will use quad faces. So let's say that we want to try and find out if there are any other types of faces on our model. For instance, any triangles or anything over 4 sides. So that's going to be referred to as an n-gon if you're not familiar with that. So let's say we want to find our n-gons and our triangles. Well, one of the ways that we can do this is to go to Mesh, and let's go to Cleanup. Okay, and this is going to give us options for kind of fixing and selecting different problems that may occur with our model. We're going to concentrate just on the types of faces in this lesson. So what we want to do is our operation, let's go ahead and reset this. If this is set to clean up matching polygons, we want to actually just set that to select matching polygons. So we're just going to be viewing the polygons. We're not going to be changing anything. Okay, and we can set that to apply to selected objects or all polygonal objects. And down here under Fix by Tessellation, we have the option to select 4-sided faces or faces with more than 4 sides. Okay, so we'll concentrate on those two. Now you see that there's no selection for triangles. So what we can do is if we want to find just the, let's say we want to find the n-gons so that we can fix those. So we'll go ahead and check faces with more than 4 sides, which is going to be your n-gons, and we can either hit Apply or Clean Up. Okay, now right now you can see that there aren't too many faces selected. In fact, I can't really see any. But without clicking anything else, I'm going to go ahead and hit F on the keyboard. And that's going to frame in on particular areas where there may be n-gons. Now if you hit F and nothing happens or the entire model frames up in your scene, that probably means that you're okay. You can go ahead and turn on wireframe, and that will allow you to kind of see where those n-gons may be. So if you come out here, you may have certain areas with n-gons. You'll be able to see those a little bit more clearly. But if you hit F, it may zoom in. Now if you have one over here and one over here, it may try to frame that in, something like that. But turning on your wireframe will still enable you to see it. So we can go ahead and move in there, and we can see that that's actually on the inside of the mouth, and it's actually highlighted those n-gons. So this will allow us to either say, okay, those n-gons are fine, those are going to work, or we can go ahead and just fix those with any of our modeling tools. Okay, and let's go ahead and fix this one up. Okay. Now we've fixed this up. Let's go ahead and run that cleanup again. And with the same thing selected, we'll choose faces with more than 4 sides. We'll go ahead and clean up. And now you can see as I frame it, frames the whole thing, nothing is selected. So you can tell we don't have any more n-gons on here. Okay, so let's say that we want to find triangles. Okay, those are a little bit more acceptable to have in our mesh, but let's say we still want to find those just to make sure that they're in a good spot. And so what we can do is we'll select our mesh and we'll go back to our cleanup. This time we'll turn off faces with more than 4 sides, and let's turn on 4-sided faces. So this is going to select all our quads, all our 4-sided faces. Let's go ahead and run cleanup. And now you can see it looks like everything has been selected. So what we want to do is invert the selection to select anything that's not selected. So if we think about this, all the quads are selected, the triangles are not selected. So at this point, if we hold down Shift and drag across, it'll actually invert the selection. So now any triangles on this mesh should be selected. Let's go ahead and hit F to frame up, and you can see that there's some triangles here and here. So if we move around to the back, you can see those right here. So a few more clicks to go ahead and get that type of information. But now we can go in, and if we want to kind of fix this up, we can. If we want to kind of draw that geometry out across the side, we can do any sort of modifications that we can to our mesh. But it's always a good idea to be able to see how many polygons you have in your mesh, and also to be able to view the types of polygons that you have in your mesh. Now you can also get some information. For instance, if you're working with NURBS, and I'll just bring in a NURBS cylinder here. So if you're working with NURBS, you can still find out the spans on this. If you just hit your open your attribute editor, Control A, you can see the degree of the surface, and you can also see the number of spans in U and V. So that's you can get some information about your NURBS objects as well. All right. So really important to be able to see the information, get the information about your meshes, see the types of polygons that you're using if you're using polygons. So you use the heads-up display, use the cleanup functionality to just make sure that you've got all of the right types of polygons and you've got the right number of polygons in your meshes. Really, really important. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is redrawing n-gons. So there are a number of types of sort of topology that we may need to modify to get sort of the optimal results. And that includes n-gons and maybe some pole scenarios. So we'll go ahead and look at those type of issues in the next lesson.